It is currently October of 2020, and earlier in the year, when COVID hit, approximately around March here in the United States, many companies decided to push their maximum password age out to much longer value to avoid having users make password changes as they were transitioning to this work from home environment. So let's suppose we're one of those companies and we've adjusted out to a max of 270 days, and we need to reel that back in now. Now that everyone's comfortable with the work from home environment, we want to go back to our standard 90-day policy. I want to give you a method of doing this that requires no special tool. So I'm going to show you a trick that many people have never seen within the Windows Active Directory. Let's suppose we have about 8,000 users on our network, and in March of 2020 we changed to that 270-day policy. The policy I'm referring to is found right here. It's a part of that default domain policy. So we've set our overall domain maximum password age to 270. And one method you might pursue is to change this and make adjustments. Change that 270, perhaps bring it back to 250 next week, and then a week after that bring it back to 220, and then change it maybe to 180. But as you do that week by week, the problem is anyone who's over that 250 to 270 range, they're going to immediately have to change their password. In fact, if I were to drastically bring this all the way back to 90, chances are many of my employee base is way over that 90-day age, so it's going to trigger everyone to have to reset their password. And since they all do that, there's going to be another wave that comes approximately 90 days later. So we want to avoid that, and I'm going to give you a method to reset a user's last password set time to today without having them change their password. We're going to reset everyone to 0, and then we're going to balance this out over the coming weeks. So the trick to doing this, I'll show you visually in just a second. Let's first take a look at an account. So let's take a net user command. Let's look at an account that we have here called test 567. So the test 567 account, the last password set time is 3/1 of 2020. Even though it shows a password expiration time of 11/26, that's a calculated value. It's calculated by taking the last password set time, adding in the domain max password age to determine that time. So what we want to do in this case, I'll show you visually with ADUC, and of course you would probably script this. So let's go into ADUC. Let's search for that account, test 567, and we are going to go to the account and set the flag for user must change password at next logon. We'll do an apply. And by doing this, we're going to apply that. We're also going to set it back and apply it. And by cycling through that, really the first checkbox that we put there, that reset the account age essentially to 0, or the last password set time, not the account age. It set that to 0. So now what I'm going to see is if I go back here and I do the same command, the last password set time has changed to today, which is October 21st, approximately 8:13 a.m. So now I've reset this to 0, and I could write a script to do this for the entire account base, and that's really the approach I would take to reset everything back to 0, and then my concern is to balance this out and make it symmetric over the coming weeks and months and so forth. So if I have 8,000 users, what I may decide to do is to break those up into groups, group A, B, C, D, etc., about 1,000 apiece. And if I want to balance this out over, say, an 8-week period, I'm going to do some follow-up action after I reset all of these to 0. So the first week, I would reset everyone's account to 0 days old, and I would change my domain maximum age to 90 days. So that's going to avoid people doing password changes for approximately the next 90 days. However, in that case, after 90 days, I'm going to be hit with all 8,000 people trying to change their password. So the trick is to do this on week 1. Then in week 2, you want to take the group B that you have and reset that to 0. So now the first group, their password age is about 7 days old. And then in week 2, those are back at 0 for that group B. And then group C, when you get to the 3rd week, you're going to reset their password to an age of 0, and week 1 has already aged into 14 days old, week 2 is 7 days old, and you can see what we're doing is week by week we're balancing out the password age. Now of course this is extending that age even a little bit more as we transition through this, but the point is that we've cycled back to a 90-day policy, and over the next 90 days we're balancing out the future password changes and making them a little more symmetric. So once I've cycled through all 8,000 employees after about the 8th week, now I've got a balanced structure. So when that 90-day interval does hit, I've got one group of people, approximately 1,000 people, changing their password, and then a week later I've got another 1,000 people who are coming up on a password change, and a week after another 1,000, and so forth. So it can work into a nice balance. And notice the users, when we run this script, they do not change their password, but yet we're resetting the password last set time to the day that we run the script. And that is going to allow us to bring this in without any user interaction, but yet we balance it out for the future.